I think just waiting for a couple more here. And one more here, and then I think we're ready to get going. But hey, everyone, and welcome to the Omnichannel Expert Roundtable. I'm Zach. I head up the agency program here at ShipBob, and I'm joined today by some awesome partners, many of which I've met in person, which is awesome, but partners at adQuadrant, Cronix, Channeled, and Winclap. And we're going to get some great insights and strategies for omni-channel success. So instead of introducing themselves, or instead of me introducing them, I'd love to pass it over to them, leading off with Jeremy, if you want to do a quick round of introduction, and then just popcorn around the room.
100%. Thanks, Zach. My name is Jeremy Fenderson. I'm a Senior Director of Client Partnerships here at adQuadrant. We are a creative-first, measurement-led, AI-enabled team of strategists, and we really focus on helping direct-to-consumer brands grow, aligning with their goals, and really capturing new opportunities. It's definitely an interesting world. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you. I'll pass it over to Andrew.
I'm Andrew Hurley, co-founder of Channeled. We're an e-commerce consultancy and agency focused on marketplaces and multi-channel for scaling D2C brands. And let's see, is it Amandeep next?
Yep. Hello, everyone. So yeah, Amandeep here from Cronix. I'm the president and founder of Cronix. We are a web design and development agency. We work with the major e-commerce platforms like Shopify, BigCommerce, Shopware, WooCommerce, etc. Happy to be here.
And I'm Avi Mansvi, GM North America for Winclap. Winclap is a growth transformation company that's focused on using different digital solutions to help bring growth marketing to life and make it more business oriented. Excited to be here.
Awesome stuff, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And before we get into our questions, just want to let the chat know, please feel free to chime in with any additional questions or your own feedback on these questions. We want to make it conversational as possible. So feel free to just chime in wherever here. But I guess to kick things off, question number one here, would love to hear from the team. But for brands just starting to explore expansion from their brand.com into new sales channels, what's the first practical next step they should take for a solid foundation for growth? And we'll start things off with Jeremy here.
100%. I think I'll give you two. The first is understanding why we want to expand. What are we really looking to achieve? And then tying that back to what success looks like from a business objective standpoint. Are we expanding and using this new channel as a loss leader to introduce new customers to the product and then bringing them back to the .com? Or are we finding this channel as a way to tackle new audiences and expand market share? From there, you can get really practical and say, what are the different channels available? What is the investment, the time, the relevance of the audience? Pick the top one and then go after it.
Awesome stuff. And then Andrew, if you want to go from there as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And just piling on, I guess when we're working with brands, thinking about taking that next step into a new channel, I think we do like to step back and figure out what have we learned so far about customers and the brand. I think importantly, brands have a tendency to want to expand very quickly when they may not be sort of fully optimized on their initial channels. And, then what you're doing is introducing some level of complication that, now you've got to integrate multiple channels, manage inventory across those channels, and ensure that you have consistency both from a pricing and content standpoint. But when you've sort of checked all those boxes, then I think the next thing that we say is, look, figure out what that next best market is based on who you are. What are you selling? Are your customers there? Are your competitors there? And can you fully support that channel as the next step? So then I'm not sure. Back to you, Zach, I guess, to pass it to one of the other guys.
Yeah, and I think I can speak on this as well. What the insights provided by you, Andrew, I would say, and Jeremy. It's from a perspective of choosing which channel to go with it. How to plan for that. From my technical perspective, I would say that once you have those channels figured out, I would say definitely you need to do some technical analysis. Do you have the tech stack and operational feasibility to integrate those things within your e-commerce system or whatever the stack that you have currently. And yes, you have the integration of the inventory, order, fulfillment, etc. And also then you want to make sure once you have all those operational workflow is figured out, make sure you have the customer support a plan in place as well. You don't want to be in a scenario that you launch something new and then you don't have any way to support the customers over there. So yeah.
Yeah, one thing I want to say that's I agree with all these things, and I think these are all very smart points. I think, in some cases, one thing I often urge our partners to do is going in saying it's okay that not everything is perfect and ready. You can have experimentation as well. And some of the most successful, innovative omni-channel brands are the ones that were able to take that risk. So if everything isn't 100% buttoned up, it's okay to try it out if you have some sort of directional understanding of where you want to go from a KPI perspective.
Awesome stuff. I'm hearing a little bit of a general theme across the board of making sure, kind of with that first initial channel, just making sure things are pretty dialed in before expanding, but also just using those learnings to then make the next logical next step. Maybe if from that first channel you realized a demographic that would be a great fit for maybe a younger audience, something like TikTok Shop would be a next logical step. But I think that's a good segue into our next question with what specific sales channel should brands first look at when navigating omni-channel expansion, and how would you strategically select those new channels to add to the mix? And then Andrew, if you want to kick off first with this question, that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is you said in your tee up to the question is, are your customers there and is it a fit for your channel? And I think sort of understanding too that, we always look at channels with a P&L model as a starting point. Not all channels are the same. You have to sort of figure out what your expected cost of acquisition is, what is the model for that channel. Not all channels operate as a true like 3P market. It might be more of a wholesale model, and understanding whether you even have the margin to support that effort is even worthwhile. We've had so many customers that, they see the next shiny thing, like, oh, we should go into Amazon 1P, for example. And by the time they read the fine print, that they're actually, going to be in a much worse place, selling at wholesale, and not realizing that full kind of marginal sale. I think that's something that's really important to understand. But then just strategic alignment. What are those channels where your customers are? And then pick that next best step and just go do it. And I think, as Avi said, is a really smart way to approach that is to test it. Maybe part of your catalog, not the whole catalog.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point too. I mean, one thing we really look for in new channels, that's a couple of different things. I think it's hard to say something definitively. I think it's going to be very nuanced. So first thing is like product channel fit, right? Which channel really makes sense for that particular product? Sometimes, let's say a Pinterest isn't necessarily going to make sense for every brand, even if you've heard good things, right? Or maybe it is. And I think also, obviously, the evolution of the brand. So where it is, a very established Fortune 500 brand, omnichannel brand, is going to act very different than a challenger or a brand that's raising a new series in VC capital. So taking some of those things into consideration and how staunchly you need to think about ROI when launching on those channels. So it could be a wide variety of ways that you can actually go in terms of expansion, and you work with a partner to hopefully figure out the consideration for those channels.
100%. I think about it as zooming out and saying, what are we trying to achieve in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, and almost think about each of these channels as like players on the field. If I need to score 100 points, what are my established channels now? And then what role do these additional channels need to play in order for me to get there, right? And you also think about, do you need ROI immediately? Can the payback period be longer? What does that mean for you? And then also, how does that position you in terms of your customer, right? So you think about your brand, who you are today, you're going to be a slightly different version of yourself based on the different brands or the different channels, right? You might be the lowest cost on one channel or the highest value on another or the fastest shipped on another. All of these things turn into a combination or a team that you're building that you can look to achieve your goal by the end of a given time period. And they'll change as you advance and grow into the channel. So I really zoom out and think about, what are we trying to achieve? What role do these channels need to play? Who am I on these channels? And then how do I see those leading signals initially that say we're going in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with. Sorry, something happened. But yeah, I agree with all the insights provided. I think technically I would say the sentiment is going to remain same. Like you have to figure out like based on your demographic, your audience, the product market fit, and then you're selecting a particular channels. I see some of the clients that I work with. If everyone is on definitely on a Instagram, on now they're also trying to go in a TikTok, but of course TikTok doesn't really work for everyone, right? If you don't really have the audience, if you don't really are not going to invest that kind of a time to create that kind of audience over there, then I don't think so it's worth investing just creating a shop over there, right? So yeah, figure out like whether you are able to support that kind of a channel or not, and go from there. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Really good insights, everyone. I think going off of that, I think when going into a new channel specifically with my next question here, thinking about what are the key metrics to be measuring success, what are the key things to look out for, given with new sales channels as well as new marketing channels. Different customers are in different stages of the funnel. The customer that converts through your .com from a Google brand search is probably a lot different than someone that discovers you net new from TikTok Shop and so on. But with all these different stages of the funnel and different audiences and so on different channels, how are you guys measuring success with different key KPIs to ensure that the brand is scaling a new channel as efficiently as possible? And I think Avi, maybe you kick off this one.
Yeah, and I think this is a good question, feeding off some of the points that Jeremy was making on payback periods, more of those business-oriented types of metrics. I mean, one thing that we do within Winclap is we have what we call our quantitative growth model. And the quantitative growth model, very simply, is trying to consolidate 3 key thematic areas in terms of metrics. There's your standard media metrics, CACs, all that sort of stuff from a digital perspective. There's things like LTV and incrementality coefficients that are factored in as well. And then, of course, those gross margins, buyback periods, et cetera, churn rates, things like that, to get a better understanding of the value that channels are having in terms of pure profitability for a business. And this applies to online and offline as well. And, it could sound like a lot, but factoring in all those things, trying to achieve some balance and getting some sort of understanding, I think, is important. We like to say that all models are incorrect, but some are useful. So it's just about thinking which are the ones that are going to be good for you to use. And that's our approach in trying to aggregate all those different areas.
Yeah, I can speak further on that. Like, I was working with a client, they were on Amazon, and they also had their own website as well on Shopify Plus. So, they wanted to see, how whether it's just an assumption, like, the number of orders are being placed, or, how much profitable it is actually, how much you're spending on the channels, the cost and all the stuff. So yeah, I think, there are a lot of tools available these days, so which you can use to gather all the data, which, Abby mentioned. So yeah, I think, apart from those, the metrics, regarding the profitability and everything, I would definitely encourage to, keep a track of your NPS score, like in a customer experience. If you're doing a good customer support to your on the different channels over there, I think at the end you are going to own that customer slowly on your own channel as well, on your own website as well, if you are have your own website. So yeah, your NPS score is a pretty good one. Track your shipping times as well, and check how frequently the inventory is going out over there as well. So yeah, I think these are also some additional things which are not very day-to-day operational things, but good things to keep in mind when you're selling on other channels.
100%.
I guess, go ahead, Jeremy, and then I'll jump in after.
100%. I 100% agree with all the points made here. I also think about it from a process standpoint. We look at things as like leading indicators and lagging indicators, and we really pick the big problems to try to solve in day 1, day 30, day 90. It's not going to look pretty, right? So we start off with, do we have the right signal that allows us to say this is going in the right direction? And those come into the leading indicators. Are we getting the traffic necessary? Are we getting sales at any clip, first and foremost? But then also, what products are being sold, right? Because you can go to a new channel with all products, but we're finding more strategically that you might pick your top sellers or look at benchmark data in that channel to say what's selling, which might not be my top seller, and how do I engage there? And as you take those first 5, 10, 100 steps into that channel, are you seeing the right signals even before we get to profitability that tell us we're moving in the right direction? Then off of that as well, going into everything that the other gentleman said, Avi, and so on, is what does that back out into in terms of sales volume, LTV? How is it backing out into my ultimate goal? So really understanding the process is going to take time. What does good look like initially? And then over a period of 6 months, a year, 18 months, is it backing out into the math we want to see? And I think the big word in all of this is patience.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly, agree with all of that. I think one of the things that we like to do when we build out the models, but we'll try to do it by month, and we're looking at what are we estimating for media budget and cost of acquisition, and then what does that look like in the months going forward, right? Because there's obviously going to be some growth, hopefully, in organic versus paid. And does that sort of, as you extend out that 3, 6, 9 month mark, what does that look like in terms of overall channel profitability and performance? What does your new to brand customers versus repeats look like, and how's that sort of growth occurring within that repeat customer business within the channel? And all of that to say, before we go into any channel, we want to understand the market pretty well, right? What is overall traffic within not only this, whatever the market is, category, product, competitors, average selling price, right? Do you have an ability to come in and actually be competitive with entrenched players who are already there selling?
Awesome stuff. And Jeremy, I had a little bit of a follow-up on one of yours. I think really interesting point on both the leading and lagging indicator standpoint, and with the lagging indicators being very, very profit driven from a contribution margin and profit standpoint. Maybe going a little bit deeper on just in terms of what the impact of maybe a reduction or just a specific product's variable COGS and so on, and how that has helped educate with channel expansion, and how basically how that's gone in place in terms of maybe deciding on a new channel. Is that something that comes when you're doing new audits with brands, or kind of what does that look like?
So great question, Steve. Great question. One of the things we start off with where we have that transparency is understanding COGS per product, because it's not all the same, and an average will lead you in the wrong direction. So first we look at that and we start to build out a model. We say, if you have 50 products, what are the varying COGS behind that? Your bottom 20%, we might not even bring into a channel because your margins are so thin, it wouldn't make sense, right? Then we start to look at match of the products that we do want to promote against what's on the platform. And we say, yes, this 20% of the products we want to promote here. But then we also look at things to say, are we going to be profitable from a contribution margin standpoint? What CPA do we need to achieve? At what velocity to become profitable? And we actually add an additional chess move, which might be bundling of products to get us the AOV necessary to get the channel to work. So we'll look at those things, factoring in COGS, factoring in investment, factoring even our fees in to say, what is your total cost to acquire a customer? What numerically would that need to look like in terms of how much it costs to get the customer, the traffic, things of that nature? And then we find ways to test into that audience and that channel in a way that will be profitable.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, that's a general theme I'm seeing with agencies over the last couple of years. The ones that are going to be winning are the ones that are going much deeper into a brand's P&L and looking at more specific metrics beyond outside of the ad account. So really awesome hearing your feedback on that specific question. And going into our next question here, when adding in additional sales channels, how are you making sure to stay consistent with your wider marketing strategy, and how can brands maintain a consistent experience wherever their customers are shopping, whether it's online, on the .com, on Amazon, on TikTok Shop, or in store, and all the various channels that they're getting set up? And maybe kick things off with Amandeep.
Yeah, I think, well, the idea is, if you're in a, can you hear me, by the way? I know my video is loading, but you can hear me, right? Okay, great.
Clear.
Yeah. So yeah, I think, if you own a particular, let's say your own channel, like an e-commerce website, or in-store experience, so definitely, you're in full control of that. But when you go with the, channels like Amazon or some other ones, you are not able to control each and every aspect of your branding and everything like that. But, but still you want to make sure your brand voice is same. is consistent actually, and you're actually utilizing the feature which they're providing, like, let's say the A+ content or the brand pages, etc., to have a bit of a better branded and customer consumer experience. You don't. I mean, you cannot always replicate the same things from. Let's say if you have A+ content on the Amazon, but you probably won't have the similar kind of a thing on the website, your own website. So you need to make sure what kind of a content types or consumer basically that kind of content works for which channel, right? For example, if you're on TikTok, you are going to do a short form videos. If you're on Amazon, you're doing A+ content, right? I think, right? So so you should, of course, you're creating a content specific to the channel, but also make sure the brand voice is consistent, right? You're actually able to communicate the information across, from the product perspective, so that people can make informed decision. So yeah, that's my take on that.
This one is really near and dear to my heart, because you guys remember those different images. It's like, here's who I am on Instagram versus Facebook versus Pinterest, right? Like, you have to start off with knowing who you are, what your unique value proposition is, what problem you solve as a brand. But these different channels, you're going to be slightly different. And you need to understand who you are on those channels so that you can differentiate the experience, but still stay true to who you are as a brand, especially when you're looking at coming from a .com into other areas. You want to be able to, for lack of better terms, influence the buyer behavior, right? And that's going to take a tailored approach. So on one end, you have to clearly define your brand pillars, your brand values, who you are, but then you also have to tailor that to the channel you're going into, because you want to speak natively to them. So I think it's actually a balancing act between being consistent and speaking more natively to where you're meeting the customer.
Yeah, I'll just do real quick. I know we're running short on time. We create a brand channel plan, so creative guide for every channel that we work on with brands. That's generally adapted from a brand style guide, so that we understand how we're translating that look and feel into whatever channel, be it Amazon or some other channel, to make sure that we are communicating with customers based on where we are, launching with that brand. And that's been very helpful to help brands understand the strategy and then work on the execution, so that everybody's on the same page.
Awesome stuff. And then I know we're a little bit short on time. Want to make sure that we can get through some of these questions here. But the next question here, in terms of going off of tracking these key metrics and expanding and staying consistent across with your entire marketing strategy, what are some key technologies that you recommend your clients to use to create a more seamless omnichannel experience across these various channels? And I guess we can kick this off with Andrew here.
Certainly a PM, product information management system, as you add channels, can be very, very important to control content. Channel integrator software, right? So pricing lists across channels, if that's a concern, and maintaining that consistency is really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think as mentioned by Andrew, it's at the minimum, you need that kind of a thing, to manage the product information from across different channels, inventory, order fulfillment. If you're just starting it out, you're testing a channel. If you don't have that kind of tech stack, you don't want to invest it, that's fine. But at a minimum, you definitely need, the PIM kind of solution, or inventory, or the order fulfillment cycle, and the customer support channel. And if you can invest further, I would definitely recommend some kind of, the Power BI or data analytics tool, which can combine the reporting across different channels as well.
I think the core thing that everyone's getting to here is like an understanding of your data, right? Like what's happening at a global view, right? What's happening within individual channels. And then the big kicker is, what's the connection between them, right? Like, does my sales go up, down, left, or right when I introduce a new channel, and also when I scale? Those are the big ones.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it can be very challenging to have access to all of that data across the various channels, especially with some walled gardens like Amazon and so on, and tracking users that have gone and purchased on the .com, but have maybe a first-time purchase on Amazon, or vice versa. But a general theme that I'm seeing is, as long as you're evaluating each channel with their each individual and unique COGS and different metrics for those channels, that making sure that you're not optimizing each channel based on the same exact metrics, because ultimately there's going to be different COGS and so on based on the channel that you're selling on. Awesome stuff. And then going into our next question here, as consumer behavior and trends continue to evolve, how do you see omnichannel retail evolving, and how do you recommend your brands stay ahead of the curve? If you kick off this one.
Sorry. So I think, basically from my, maybe I'm an old school as well. So what I usually go with that, okay, everything sometimes feels shiny. Just don't go after those things. Try to make sure, are you able to support those things or not? But in terms of, latest trends, like everyone was going to talk about AI, which does have, I think it's going to become a big part of our life as well as, our businesses as well. But sometimes, the boring things actually the very traditional things, right? Like you want to give your customers the, great customer support and the personalized experience, which could be personal touch, or the product recommendation, or however you're doing the communication with them as well. So I think they're gonna stay the same. Okay, so focus on the customer experience. Either it could be based on the chatbots, or however you can do those things quickly for the customers. That is, I think, is gonna stay forever. And yeah, if you're keeping those two factors in mind, I think business will succeed no matter where you are.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I mean, Amandeep mentioned AI. I know it's the buzzy term, but I think AI is going to continue to dominate, especially a lot. And this isn't just omni-channel retail. I think it's everything. Making creative testing faster, more iterative, and more cost effective as well. And I think that's just going to underscore the industry for the next few years.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is agree with all of this. I think that shiny, that desire to sort of chase that next shiny thing when you may not be fully executing or optimizing your channels that are working is a risk. If you are going to get into these new channels, I think, attending events like this, talking to peers and other D2C companies, and talking to maybe an agency about what they're seeing working. And then if you're going to test it, but do it the right way, right? If you put half effort into it, you're probably going to get a read on the channel that is, not actually accurate in terms of whether that can be successful for you or not. So I think that's something that I think is meaningful, just to think about what is working, and are there opportunities to get into new channels and test new things. Stay aware of what those new, not just new channels that may come up, but new strategies that are working for people. Right? Everybody's moving into OTT, and that's working very well. DSP, if it's executed correctly, are really important. Top of funnel awareness and bottom of funnel conversion, ads for customers to engage with.
Yeah, I think when you think about it as taking like well-informed strategic bets, right? Like there are things that are working, things you need to optimize, things that are a solid baseline. And then there are experiments you need to run to stay ahead, right? And I would look at it as listening to your current customer base. I think people need to value that more. Talking to your customers through surveys, through looking at their behavior, where they're shopping, and really letting their actions speak in terms of where they're buying and what their trends are next. But then also saying, do it with a certain level of budget and investment, but you should always be looking to change the game by a great deal. So it might be a TikTok shops with an investment that works well with the right bundling strategy, with the right products to capture new market share, right? But it also may be doubling down on what's working now. I think keeping your ear to the streets, listening to your customer base, to their buyer behavior, and also taking some strategic bets is how you stay ahead of the game and stay informed.
Yep. Sounds like making sure to stay up to date with the newest trends, but also making sure to not go too deep in those trends if it's not working for your brands, and being able to identify when to pull out and focus on what's really working is going to be paramount for brands this year. And last question here, just really want to hear from you guys. What's an example of a brand that you've worked with recently that's really just nailing their omni-channel strategy? And kicking things off with Andrew here.
We work with a brand owned by Samsonite that I think is one of the more complicated brands because of some of their systems and all the people involved. But it has been a great experience seeing kind of we have a role in managing some of their marketplace activities, and they're really good about sort of keeping consistency across channels with respect to pricing and promos. And so whether that's in store, online, it's all consistent across the board. And have been very supportive of some of the things that we're doing creatively to sort of support telling the story of the product in a way that hadn't been done before, but is consistent with sort of adapting what they're doing D2C to some of the marketplace activities, and that's been really a great partnership to see what they're doing outside of the things that we touch, but they've got some I think some great potential in the future.
Yeah, I think so one of the the client that we were working with, that was Henna. So they sell the henna art and henna art supplies and everything. And they also sell like what do you call it, the stencils. So they were the early adopters of the TikTok shop, I would say, and they did see a good traction. I mean, I was surprised that they have. I mean, of course, they did build the audience. Like they were getting like around 1 million views and everything, and so basically they actually use that audience to actually what do you call it, to bring a bit more traction toward their the shop side of things. So yeah, they did it pretty well, and then. I think they were a bit late on the Amazon, but once they got in on Amazon, they started getting good traction as well. So yeah, the Henna and then Organifi, there's another their food health supplement products they sell over there. So that was a good one. They actually I think it was a reverse. So they came pretty late on TikTok, but I think they didn't even have the kind of audience over there, or they didn't invest time to build the audience. But as they were on Amazon, and Amazon was one of the the major revenue source for them. So yeah, I would say they were doing pretty good.
We work with a brand called Teleties, it's a hair accessory brand. They're really focused on being a functional replacement for traditional hair tie and clip. They're just a great example of having a product that is high quality. They're in Amazon. They sell on their .com, obviously. They're in boutique stores across the U.S. as well as Target. And they just been really good around like, how do we push the envelope? How do we provide an amazing product? How do we stay connected with our customer base? So they're doing this really well.
Awesome stuff, everyone. And thank you so much for joining, everyone that's still watching us here. But feel free to check out all of our panelists' booths, the virtual booths, and learn more about everything they're doing and what they went over today. But good stuff, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Zach.